Chosen one. There is a reason your life has suddenly begun to feel different, and there is a reason you are here right now. You have been carrying a quiet ache in your spirit, the pain of delay without a clear explanation, the loneliness that no one around you can quite understand, and the unsettling fear that maybe you imagined the calling you feel so deeply. You may have found yourself asking almost in a whisper, "I know I'm not ordinary, but why hasn't my life opened yet?" Hear this clearly, chosen one. You are not watching by accident. This moment has been arranged by heaven with precision. Scripture reminds us in Habakkuk chapter 2 verse 3 that the vision waits for an appointed time, and when it speaks, it will not lie. You are standing at the edge of that appointed time now. What you have felt shifting inside you is not confusion, it is alignment. What feels like delay is actually divine positioning. A supernatural breakthrough is near, and with it comes elevation, restoration, and a heaven-authorized wealth shift meant for this season of your life. Stay with this message until the end, because what follows will help you recognize what God is already doing beneath the surface. And as you listen, chosen one, gently commit your heart, subscribe, so you remain connected to what heaven is releasing here. Comment 777 along with the city or nation where you are watching from, and let that act become your declaration that you are ready to receive, to remain, and to allow the Word of God to soak deeply into your spirit as this message unfolds. Chosen one. What you have been feeling lately is not confusion, and it is not instability. It is not burnout, and it is not you losing direction. It is something far more precise and far more intentional than that. Your spirit has sensed a shift before your circumstances could explain it. And that is why everything familiar now feels slightly off, like clothes that no longer fit the person you have become. You wake up with the same responsibilities, the same routines, sometimes even the same people around you, yet something inside you knows you are no longer standing where you used to stand. This is not imagination. This is not wishful thinking. This is recognition. There was a season when you blamed yourself for the delay. You replayed decisions. You questioned timing. You wondered if you had missed something, if you had done something wrong, or if you simply were not as favored as you once believed. I know that place well. I remember carrying that same quiet weight, watching others move ahead while I felt held back without explanation. On the surface, nothing looked broken, but inside there was a constant question pressing against my spirit. Why does it feel like I am ready, but life has not opened yet? That question is not a weakness, chosen one. It is evidence that your spirit is awake while your season was still catching up. Here is the truth most people never hear when they are in this place. Delay does not always mean denial. Sometimes it means protection. Sometimes it means preparation. And sometimes it means heaven is rearranging things you cannot see yet, because if you stepped forward too early, the weight of what was coming would have crushed you instead of crowned you. Scripture reminds us that there is a time appointed for every purpose under heaven, and when that time arrives, it does not need to be forced. It arrives with authority. What you are feeling now is the internal confirmation that the appointed time is drawing near. Chosen one, your life feels different because heaven has already moved on your behalf. The shift did not begin in your bank account. It did not begin in your career. It did not begin in external recognition. It began in you. You started seeing differently. You started tolerating less. You started sensing when something was not aligned, even if you could not explain why. Things that once excited you now feel empty. Conversations that once felt normal now drain you. Environments you once adapted to now feel heavy. This is not arrogance. This is not detachment. This is alignment. When God prepares to elevate someone, the first thing he does is change their appetite. There was a moment in my own journey when I realized I could no longer go back to who I was, even though nothing on the outside had fully changed yet. I tried to force myself to be comfortable with what once sustained me, but it never worked. Every attempt to shrink back felt suffocating. That is when I learned this truth: when heaven upgrades your assignment, it also upgrades your sensitivity. You begin to feel what no longer belongs long before you see where you are going next. That discomfort is not meant to scare you. It is meant to keep you from settling. Anointed One. This is why your life feels quieter now. Not emptier, but quieter. You may have noticed a growing desire for stillness, for space, for moments where you can breathe without noise. That is not isolation. That is recalibration. God often draws His chosen ones into silence before He releases them into abundance, because clarity is born in stillness. I remember seasons when silence felt unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, because I was used to movement and striving. But it was in that quiet that my spirit finally learned to listen instead of panic, and that listening changed everything. Your sense of time may also feel different. The urgency that once drove you has softened. You still care, but you are no longer frantic. You still desire progress, but you are no longer desperate. That is not passivity. That is trust being formed. When you move out of survival mode and into alignment, you stop chasing outcomes and start recognizing timing. The pressure to rush dissolves because your spirit knows you are no longer late. You are right on schedule. Chosen One. Heaven is intervening in ways that do not always announce themselves loudly. Sometimes intervention looks like restraint. Sometimes it looks like doors closing without explanation. Sometimes it looks like people drifting away without conflict. You may have noticed relationships changing, not because of betrayal or drama, but because the connection no longer feeds your spirit. Let me tell you something gently and clearly. Not everyone who walked with you in the previous season is authorized to walk with you into the next one. This is not judgment. It is stewardship. God removes what cannot survive where He is taking you. This is especially true when wealth and influence are part of your assignment. Heaven never releases increase without first reinforcing the vessel. Wealth is not just money. It is responsibility. It is amplification. It magnifies what already exists within you. That is why God deals with the inner world first. That is why He allows periods where you feel stripped, refined, and repositioned. He is not taking from you. He is making room. I have seen this play out again and again, both in my life and in the lives of others who carried something significant. Right before provision arrived, there was a sense of disorientation. Right before clarity came, there was a moment of questioning. Right before doors opened, there was a season where nothing seemed to move, but beneath the surface alignment was happening. Conversations were being prepared, resources were being positioned, hearts were being softened, and timing was being synchronized with purpose. Chosen One. If your life feels different, it is because you are no longer who you were. You have crossed an internal threshold. You may not have language for it yet, but your spirit recognizes it, and heaven responds to recognition. This is not the time to panic. This is not the time to second-guess what you have felt. This is the time to remain attentive, to stay humble, to stay surrendered, to let God complete what He has already begun. You are not standing in confusion. You are standing on the edge. And the edge is always uncomfortable because it is the place between what was and what is about to be revealed. Stay here. Breathe here. Let the weight of this moment settle into your spirit, because the shift you feel is real, and it is leading you somewhere you could not have reached any other way. Chosen One. There is a lie that quietly settles into the heart during long seasons of waiting, and it sounds like this: if it were meant to happen, it would have happened by now. That lie does not shout. It whispers. It seeps in during moments when you are alone with your thoughts, replaying timelines, measuring progress, comparing your life to people who seem to move faster with less resistance. And if you are not careful, that whisper turns into self-blame. You start asking what you did wrong, what you missed, who you should have been by now. But hear this clearly, Anointed One, you were never behind. You were being held. There is a difference between being delayed and being preserved. Delay drains you. Preservation protects you. What God preserves, He covers. What He covers, He prepares. And what He prepares, He releases at the exact moment it can no longer be denied. The reason your life did not unfold on the timeline you expected is not because heaven forgot you. It is because heaven was guarding you from becoming visible before you were fortified. Visibility without stability is dangerous. Increase without grounding destroys more people than lack ever could. I had to learn this the hard way. There was a season when I prayed for acceleration, not realizing that acceleration would have exposed parts of me that were not yet healed. I thought I was asking for progress, but heaven heard a request for protection, and what felt like silence was actually restraint. Looking back now, I can see how close I was to stepping into opportunities that looked right, but would have hollowed me out instead of building me up. God did not slow me down to punish me. He slowed me down to spare me. Chosen One. Your sensitivity has increased because you have survived pressure that would have crushed a less prepared vessel. The reason you feel deeper, see sharper, and sense misalignment faster than others is because your spirit has been trained through waiting. Waiting does not waste you when it is guided by heaven. It strengthens discernment. It sharpens humility. It teaches you to listen instead of react. That is not lost time. That is investment time. You may have noticed that people who rushed ahead of you often had to circle back. Some burned out. Some compromised. Some gained what they asked for and lost themselves in the process. That is not judgment. It is observation. God is not impressed by speed. He is committed to endurance. The kind of wealth He entrusts to His chosen ones is not just financial, it is influence, reach, and responsibility. That level of stewardship requires roots, not just wings. There is a reason Scripture speaks of seasons so often. Harvest does not arrive because the seed demands it. Harvest arrives because the ground is ready to sustain what it produces. Your life has been cultivated quietly. Every unanswered prayer, every closed door, every pause that confused you was part of the soil work. And soil work is invisible to those who only measure success by outcomes. But heaven measures by capacity. Anointed One. You were not overlooked, you were shielded. There are things you now understand about yourself that you would not have learned if life had moved faster. You learned how to stand without applause. You learned how to stay honest when shortcuts were available. You learned how to wait without becoming bitter. Those are not small lessons. Those are the foundations of authority. And authority, once released, cannot be faked. Your life feels different now because the season of holding is coming to completion. Not because you forced it, but because you have become someone heaven can trust. Trust is the true currency of the kingdom. Before God releases provision, He releases perspective. Before He opens doors, He fortifies identity. That is why your inner world changed before your outer world followed. That order matters. You may feel moments of grief for time you think you lost. Let yourself feel it, but do not let it define you. Nothing was wasted. Nothing slipped through God's hands. The years that felt quiet were years where heaven was building something in you that cannot be taken from you. What is about to open will not require you to scramble or prove yourself. It will recognize you because you belong there. Chosen one. Stop apologizing to yourself for not being further along. Stop explaining your journey to people who only understand results, not process. Your story does not make sense to those who rush. It only makes sense to those who listen. And God has been listening every step of the way. He has seen the nights you held it together when no one checked on you. He has seen the decisions you made in private that protected your integrity. He has seen the faith you carried quietly when doubt would have been easier. There comes a point in every anointed life where the question shifts. You stop asking, "Why am I not there yet?" And you start realizing, "Why was I protected this long?" That realization is not loud. It is sobering. It settles into your chest like truth that does not need to be defended. And when that truth lands, fear loses its grip. You no longer rush because you no longer doubt arrival. The wealth shift you are approaching is not just about resources moving toward you, it is about responsibility being lifted off you. You will notice that striving is losing its hold. You are still diligent, but not desperate. You are still focused, but not frantic. That change is not accidental. It is the evidence that trust has replaced anxiety, and where trust exists, heaven moves freely. If you feel yourself standing between relief and anticipation, that is exactly where you are meant to be. You are not waiting anymore. You are positioned. Positioned does not always feel comfortable, but it is powerful. It is the posture of someone who knows that movement is coming, not because they chased it, but because it was released. Chosen one, you are not late. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are held, shaped, and prepared for a season that requires depth, not just desire. Stay grounded here. Let this truth recalibrate your spirit, because what opens next will not come with chaos. It will come with clarity, and clarity always follows preservation. Chosen one, as the inner shift settles, the signs begin to surface, not as fireworks, not as loud announcements, but as subtle confirmations that something irreversible has already taken place. Heaven rarely shouts when it moves. It leaves evidence. And if you have been paying attention, you will notice that your life is no longer responding to you the way it once did. The same inputs do not produce the same outcomes. The same effort does not feel required. The same fears no longer have the same authority. This is not coincidence. This is alignment revealing itself. One of the first signs is a strange but undeniable sense of emotional distance from your old life. Things that once defined you no longer hold you. Old ambitions feel hollow. Old fears feel exaggerated. Old wounds no longer bleed the way they used to. You may still remember them, but they no longer control you. This can be unsettling because identity often clings to pain long after pain has expired. But what you are experiencing is not numbness, it is release. God does not heal you by erasing memory. He heals you by removing charge. When the charge is gone, the memory loses power. You may notice that your reactions have changed. Situations that would have triggered anxiety, anger, or urgency now pass through you with far less resistance. That does not mean you no longer care. It means you are no longer ruled by emotion. Emotional regulation is not emotional suppression. It is spiritual maturity. When heaven prepares someone for increase, it stabilizes their inner world first. A storm outside cannot move someone who has learned to be still inside. Another sign is a growing discomfort with environments that thrive on noise, chaos, or shallow validation. You may find yourself pulling back not out of arrogance, but out of self-preservation. This withdrawal is often misunderstood. People may say you are distant or changed. They are not wrong, but the change is necessary. God often removes his chosen ones from distraction before he entrusts them with direction. Silence is not emptiness. It is space where instruction can land. I remember reaching a point where being busy no longer felt productive. I could still perform, still accomplish, still show up, but something deeper in me resisted constant motion. At first, I judged myself for it. I thought I was losing drive, but I wasn't losing drive. I was losing restlessness. Restlessness belongs to seasons of striving. Stillness belongs to seasons of alignment. When you no longer need to prove yourself, movement becomes intentional instead of compulsive. Chosen one. You may also be noticing changes in how time feels. Days may pass quickly, yet certain moments feel expanded, almost suspended. You are less haunted by the past and less controlled by the future. Your mind returns to the present more easily. This is not detachment from reality. It is deeper engagement with it. The present moment is where heaven operates most clearly. When anxiety about tomorrow loosens, it is because your spirit trusts what is unfolding. There is also a sharpening of discernment. You sense when something is off without needing evidence. You feel hesitation in your body before your mind catches up. This is not paranoia, it is intuition being restored. Discernment is not suspicion, it is awareness. God trains his anointed ones to recognize alignment and misalignment quickly, because hesitation at the wrong door can save years of recovery. When your discernment increases, your tolerance for compromise decreases. You may find that certain opportunities, even good ones, no longer excite you the way they once would have. They look right on paper, but feel wrong in your spirit. That is not ingratitude. That is stewardship. Not every open door is an authorized door. As your assignment clarifies, so does your ability to say no without guilt. This is a critical sign of maturity. Wealth that comes from God is protected by discernment, not driven by impulse. Another sign appears in relationships. Some connections fade quietly, not through conflict, not through betrayal, but through irrelevance. The conversations repeat, the depth stalls, the resonance dissolves. This can feel lonely if you interpret it as loss, but it is not loss, it is transition. God does not remove people to punish you or them. He removes them to make room. Space is required for what is coming. Carrying unnecessary weight into a new season creates unnecessary strain. I have learned that the most painful separations are often the most necessary ones, not because the people were bad, but because the season was over. When God closes relational chapters, he does so gently but firmly. You may grieve, but you are not abandoned. You are being repositioned among those who can recognize and honor who you are becoming, not who you used to be. Chosen. One another sign is the way your thoughts carry more weight now. You may notice that what you dwell on begins to show up more quickly. Conversations align, resources appear, obstacles dissolve. This is not imagination, it is focus meeting authority. When alignment increases, manifestation accelerates, not because you are forcing reality, but because reality is responding to clarity. Confusion delays outcomes, clarity invites movement. This is why it is so important to guard your inner dialogue in this season. Fear spoken internally still carries power. Doubt entertained quietly still shapes atmosphere. But so does trust. So does gratitude. So does expectation. You are not being asked to be perfect. You are being asked to be aware. Awareness is what keeps momentum clean. There may also be an increase in subtle confirmations timing that feels precise encounters, that feel orchestrated information that finds you exactly when you need it. These are not signs to obsess over. They are signals to stay attentive. Heaven communicates through alignment, not spectacle. When you stop chasing signs, they begin to follow you. Chosen one. If these signs are present, it means something foundational has already shifted. You are no longer operating from survival. You are operating from positioning, and positioning feels different. It can feel quieter, slower, even uncertain at times. But underneath that stillness is stability. Stability is what allows blessing to remain instead of pass through. Do not rush to label this season. Do not demand immediate evidence. Let the shift complete its work. Trust the process that has already brought you this far. You are not waiting for something to start. It has already started. What you are learning now is how to stay aligned long enough for it to fully arrive. Chosen one. This is the place where many people become unsettled, even frightened, not because something is wrong, but because something is no longer familiar. This is the space where the old version of life has loosened its grip, but the new structure has not fully materialized yet. And if you are honest, this is the moment where panic tries to creep in. Not loud panic, not dramatic fear, but a quiet unease that asks, if I am no longer who I was, then who am I now? This question does not mean you are lost. It means you are in transition. Most people never talk about this phase because it is uncomfortable to explain. It does not fit into testimonies that jump straight from struggle to breakthrough. But this space is sacred. It is where identity is rerouted. It is where God teaches you how to stand without leaning on old labels, old coping mechanisms, or old sources of validation. And it can feel lonely if you interpret it incorrectly, but loneliness is not the same as isolation. Isolation drains you. Sacred solitude strengthens you. I remember standing in this exact place, feeling stripped of urgency, but not yet clothed in certainty. I was no longer desperate, but I was not yet fully secure. I had let go of what no longer fit, but I had not yet been shown what would replace it. And in that gap, fear tried to reframe the moment as failure. It told me I had stalled. It told me I had gone too far inward. It told me I had missed momentum. But none of that was true. I was learning how to wait without collapsing back into old habits. Chosen one. The reason this phase feels tense is because your nervous system is recalibrating. You are no longer operating from survival, but you have not yet fully embodied stability. Your body remembers urgency even when your spirit has outgrown it. That is why you may feel restless at times without knowing why. That restlessness is not a call to rush. It is a sign that your system is learning a new rhythm. This is also the phase where comparison becomes especially tempting. You may glance at others and wonder if you are falling behind again. Be careful here. Comparison is most dangerous when you are closest to alignment. The enemy does not need to stop you if he can rush you. He only needs you to abandon your posture of trust. Do not interpret stillness as stagnation. Stillness is often the final preparation before movement. There is a deep humbling that happens in this space. You realize that much of what once drove you was fueled by fear of being left behind, fear of not being enough, fear of not arriving in time. As those fears lose power, motivation shifts. You begin to move from calling instead of pressure. That shift can feel disorienting because pressure is loud and calling is quiet. But calling is far more precise. Chosen one. This is where surrender becomes real, not poetic. Not the kind of surrender that sounds good in words, but the kind that releases control without demanding guarantees. It is the moment you stop negotiating timelines with God. You stop saying, I trust you, but only if you show me what's next. Instead, you say, I trust you, even if you don't explain everything yet. That is not weakness. That is maturity. Many people exit this phase too early because they mistake discomfort for danger. They go back to what they know, even if it no longer fits, just to feel grounded again. But grounding yourself in what God already closed will not bring peace. It will bring confusion. If you have felt the temptation to revert, to lower your standards, to reattach to old patterns, just to feel normal again, pause. That impulse does not come from wisdom. It comes from fear of the unknown. God often withholds the full picture at this stage, not to tease you, but to protect you from overthinking yourself out of obedience. If you saw everything at once, you would either rush or resist. So he gives you just enough clarity to stay aligned and just enough mystery to keep you dependent. Dependence is not immaturity when it is placed on the right source. This phase also reveals who you truly listen to. External voices may grow louder, questioning your choices, your pace, your silence. Some may mean well, some may not, but very few will understand what God is doing internally. You must decide whose voice carries authority now. The more your life shifts toward purpose, the fewer opinions you can afford to entertain. Discernment is not only about decisions, it is about influence. Chosen one. You are not meant to explain this season to everyone. Explanation drains energy that discernment requires. There will be time for testimony later. Right now there is time for formation. The need to be understood fades when you trust the one who understands you fully. Jesus himself withdrew often, not because he lacked love, but because intimacy with the Father was essential for clarity. If the Son of God honored withdrawal, you do not need to apologize for it. You may notice that prayer feels different now. Less frantic, less transactional, more honest. You are not begging for outcomes. You are aligning your heart. That shift is significant. When prayer becomes relational instead of survival-based, heaven responds with depth, not just relief. This is where faith matures. Not because you see everything clearly, but because you trust God even when you don't. Chosen one, do not rush to label this moment as uncertainty. It is refinement. It is integration. Everything you have learned, endured, and released is being woven together. Integration takes time. If God moved you forward before this work was complete, you would carry fragmentation into the next season, and fragmentation cannot sustain blessing. You are learning how to live without leaning on adrenaline, without chaos as motivation, without struggle as identity. That is why this feels unfamiliar. You have never lived from this place before. It is new territory. But new does not mean unsafe. It means untested. And God does not abandon what he introduces. Let this space do its work. Do not rush to fill it. Do not drown it with noise or distraction. Stay present. Stay receptive. Stay grounded in truth rather than urgency. Because what is forming now is not just your next step. It is your new foundation. And foundations must be set carefully, or everything built on them will shake. Chosen one, you are not unraveling. You are being rewired. And what feels like tension is simply the final adjustment before alignment locks into place. Chosen one. There comes a moment when the internal shift you have been living through begins to settle into something quieter, steadier, and far more powerful than excitement. This is the moment where you realize that what has been changing is not just your circumstances, but your relationship with reality itself. You are no longer reacting to life the way you once did. You are no longer bracing for impact. You are no longer moving from fear of loss or hunger for validation. Something deeper has anchored inside you, and it is changing how you stand, how you choose, and how you wait. This is where many people misunderstand the nature of a wealth shift. They imagine it as a sudden event, a dramatic reversal, a visible reward that proves everything was worth it. And while there are moments when provision does arrive suddenly, the true shift always happens earlier. It happens when your spirit stops clinging, when you no longer feel the need to force outcomes, convince people, or control timing. That internal release is not resignation. It is authority settling into place. I remember realizing that my prayers had changed. I was no longer asking God to hurry. I was no longer bargaining with timelines. Instead, there was a quiet confidence forming, a sense that what was meant for me could not miss me. That realization did not come with fireworks. It came with peace. And peace, when it is genuine, is one of the clearest signs that heaven has already intervened. Anxiety thrives on uncertainty. Peace thrives on trust. Chosen one. This is the phase where you begin to notice that life is responding to you differently. Not dramatically at first, but subtly. Conversations open where they once stalled. Ideas land with clarity instead of confusion. Resources appear without the strain you once expected. Even challenges feel different. They no longer shake your identity. They test your focus, but not your worth. This is because you are no longer operating from lack. You are operating from alignment. Alignment changes the way effort feels. You still work, you still prepare, you still show up. But you are no longer carrying the invisible weight of proving yourself. That weight drains more energy than any workload ever could. When it lifts, you realize how much strength you have conserved without knowing it. That conserved strength is what allows you to steward what is coming without being overwhelmed by it. Anointed One. One of the most important changes in this phase is how you relate to money and provision. You may notice that desperation has loosened its grip. Not because you no longer desire increase, but because you no longer fear absence the way you once did. Fear of lack distorts decision-making. It pushes you toward shortcuts, compromises, and misaligned opportunities. As that fear fades, wisdom rises. You begin to choose based on alignment instead of urgency. That shift alone protects wealth more effectively than any strategy ever could. This is also where gratitude deepens. Not the surface-level gratitude that thanks God only after things improve, but the kind that recognizes provision forming even before it manifests. You begin to thank God for clarity, for restraint, for discernment, for closed doors that spared you. Gratitude in this phase is not performative, it is grounded, and grounded gratitude multiplies. Chosen one, you may still have moments of doubt. That does not disqualify you. Doubt does not disappear overnight. It loses power gradually as trust proves itself reliable. When doubt arises now, it does not spiral. It passes through. You acknowledge it without obeying it. That is growth. Faith is not the absence of doubt. It is the refusal to let doubt lead. You may also notice that your vision for the future feels both simpler and larger at the same time. Simpler because you are no longer chasing everything. Larger because what remains feels meaningful. When God narrows your focus, He is not limiting you, He is refining you. Refined focus attracts refined opportunity. This is how sustainable wealth is built, by clarity, not chaos. Another shift in this phase is how you experience success in others. Where comparison once stirred insecurity, it now stirs discernment or even celebration. You are no longer measuring yourself against timelines that were never yours. You recognize that your path required different preparation, that awareness frees you from resentment, and freedom from resentment keeps your spirit clean. A clean spirit can handle increase without corruption. Chosen one. This is where patience becomes strength instead of strain. Waiting no longer feels like punishment, it feels like positioning. You trust that when the door opens, you will not need to run. You will walk. And walking is far more stable than sprinting into blessing you are not ready to carry. God does not rush his chosen ones into overflow. He leads them into it. You may sense a growing desire to steward what you already have more intentionally. Your time, your energy, your attention. That is not random. Stewardship precedes expansion. When God sees that you honor what is in your hands, he entrusts you with more. This applies not only to finances, but to influence relationships and opportunities. Carelessness disqualifies faster than lack ever could. There is also a quiet boldness forming in you now. Not arrogance, not loud confidence, but a settled knowing that you do not need to compete for what belongs to you. That boldness shows up in your boundaries, in your willingness to say no, in your refusal to chase what drains you. That is authority. Authority does not shout. It stands. Chosen one. If you are sensing a calm resolve where there used to be urgency, honor it. That calm is not complacency. It is readiness. It means you are no longer bracing for disappointment. You are available for instruction. And instruction is what turns opportunity into legacy. You are learning how to live from provision instead of toward it. That subtle shift changes everything. It allows wealth to come without redefining you. It allows elevation without ego. It allows abundance without fear. This is why your life feels different. Not because everything has changed yet, but because you have. Stay attentive in this season. Stay honest. Stay surrendered. Not passive, but receptive. What is unfolding now does not require force. It requires faithfulness. And faithfulness, once proven, is always followed by increase. Chosen one, as this season continues to unfold, there is a final adjustment that takes place quietly, almost without notice, yet it changes everything. It is the moment when you realize that you are no longer asking life to give you permission. You are no longer waiting for confirmation from people, systems, or circumstances. Something inside you has settled into agreement with heaven, and that agreement carries authority. When alignment locks in at this level, movement becomes inevitable, not frantic movement, but decisive, purposeful advancement. This is where many people misunderstand divine elevation. They expect it to arrive with constant reassurance, with signs that remove all uncertainty, with outcomes that erase every trace of doubt. But true elevation does not eliminate uncertainty. It teaches you how to move forward without being ruled by it. Confidence at this stage is not loud. It is quiet and anchored. You stop asking, "Am I allowed?" and begin acting from the knowing, "I am assigned." I remember the moment this settled in me. It did not feel like triumph. It felt like responsibility. I realized that I could no longer hide behind hesitation or wait for perfect clarity. The internal work had been done. What remained was obedience. Obedience not driven by fear, but by alignment. That shift marked the end of waiting and the beginning of stewardship. When God positions you, he expects you to honor the position. Chosen one. You may notice that your decisions now feel heavier, not burdensome, but consequential. You sense that your choices carry weight, not just for you, but for others who will be affected by what you build, what you say, and what you steward. This awareness is not pressure, it is maturity. Immaturity seeks freedom without responsibility. Maturity embraces responsibility as a form of freedom. When you reach this point, heaven trusts you with influence. This is also where the concept of wealth becomes clearer. Wealth is no longer just accumulation. It is capacity. It is the ability to respond without strain, to give without depletion, to build without burning out. God does not elevate his chosen ones to impress others. He elevates them to solve problems, to create stability, to establish spaces where others can breathe. If your heart has shifted toward impact rather than image that is not accidental, it is evidence of preparation completed. You may find that your desires have refined. You are less interested in excess and more interested in effectiveness, less drawn to noise and more drawn to substance. That refinement protects you. Excess without purpose becomes distraction. Purpose without restraint becomes exhaustion. God balances both by shaping desire. When desire aligns with assignment, provision flows cleanly. Chosen one. There will be moments in this phase where you are tempted to rush, especially when opportunity begins to surface. Be discerning. Opportunity does not require urgency to be real. If something is from God, it will respect your pace. It will not demand compromise to prove its value. Alignment brings patience into opportunity, not pressure. Let peace be the filter. Peace is not passivity, it is confirmation. You may also notice that the way people respond to you is changing. Some will sense the shift before you say a word. Others may resist it consciously or unconsciously. Not everyone is comfortable around someone who no longer needs approval. Do not let this unsettle you. You are not responsible for managing others' reactions to your alignment. Authority often creates discomfort in those who prefer familiarity over growth. This is where boundaries become essential. Not walls, but clarity. You will need to protect your time, your energy, and your focus more intentionally than before. This is not selfishness, it is stewardship. When God entrusts you with more, He also expects you to guard it. Saying no will become an act of obedience, not avoidance. You will learn that every yes carries a cost, and wisdom chooses costs carefully. Chosen one. You are entering a phase where your inner life must remain prioritized, even as your outer life expands. Do not abandon the practices that stabilized you during waiting. Stillness, reflection, prayer, and rest are not luxuries for later. They are anchors for sustainability. Many people lose alignment not because they lacked faith, but because they neglected maintenance. Elevation without maintenance leads to collapse. You are being taught differently. There may be moments when you miss the simplicity of waiting. Waiting had clarity in its own way. Movement introduces complexity. That is normal. Complexity does not mean misalignment. It means growth. Growth stretches capacity. Stretching requires integration. Be patient with yourself as you adapt. You do not need to master everything at once. You only need to stay responsive. Chosen one trust will be tested differently now. Not through lack, but through abundance. Not through silence, but through choice. When options multiply, alignment must lead. This is where discernment becomes daily practice rather than occasional necessity. Ask not just can I, but should I not just? Is this good, but is this assigned? These questions keep you grounded. As you move forward, remember this: you were not shaped for survival. You were shaped for stewardship. Everything you endured was not meant to make you tough, it was meant to make you wise. Wisdom preserves what strength builds. Let wisdom guide your steps now. Chosen one. You are no longer standing at the edge. You are stepping into the current. The shift you felt was not preparation for something far off. It was preparation for now. Walk with intention. Speak with clarity. Choose with alignment. Heaven is not watching to see if you fail. Heaven is partnering with you to see what you will steward. Remain present. Remain humble. Remain receptive. What unfolds next will not need force. It will respond to the authority you now carry. Chosen one, as this moment comes to a close, let this truth settle deeply into your spirit. Nothing you have sensed, nothing you have felt, shifting has been accidental. Heaven has already moved. What you are standing in right now is not confusion, it is confirmation. You are in your Kairos moment, your divinely appointed time, where preparation meets permission and alignment meets release. The waiting did its work. The refining has finished its assignment, and the transfer that was promised is already in motion. Anointed One, I speak peace over your mind, clarity over your decisions, and strength over your spirit. May you walk forward without fear, knowing that what God has authorized cannot be delayed by man's circumstance or opposition. May doors open without striving, provision come without strain, and favor rest upon you in ways that leave no doubt that this was orchestrated by heaven alone. Stay faithful, stay aligned, stay grateful. What is unfolding now will not require force, it will respond to obedience and trust. Carry this awareness with reverence, guard your alignment, walk gently but confidently into what is being revealed. And if this word has resonated with your spirit, you may quietly mark this moment, subscribe to remain connected, and leave a comment with 777 and the city or nation you're watching from as a sacred acknowledgement that you recognize the shift and are choosing to stay present for what God is bringing forth. Go forward in peace, chosen one. What feels different is real, and it is only the beginning.